You were on this podcast before. You know that? Do you remember?
I don't remember that, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure you do so much press.
When was it? For which film?
It was for Simon Killer.
Uh-huh.
And it was with you and Antonio.
Thank you. It was in New York?
Yeah, it was at the Crosby Street Hotel.
Uh-huh.
We were sitting in the restaurant, the cafe.
I do remember. I remember.
It's like, if you have the place.
Yeah, I remember.
We had a really nice conversation. Yeah. I was a fan of the film, and then we went out into the back courtyard for a few seconds to take a couple of pictures on the,
Yeah, absolutely. I remember that. I remember that press day.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. So I was perusing on this internet thing, and Brady. And is it every single interview you have to correct people? First of all, of course, on the pronunciation of your name, Corbet, because everybody wants to say Corbett and all that. So you're just so used to that.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe there'll be a day where just tips, and you'll be such a profoundly famous actor that
that it becomes a part of the modern vernacular.
Yeah, exactly. It's Corbet. But it's so funny because I was watching a few things, and there's always the correction of the. Yeah, and you said that this was actually, when I say this, I'm referring to your movie. That this is your directorial debut of a feature film, at least.
Yeah,
you may have made some shorts, I'm not sure, but it's called The Childhood of a Leader.
Uh-huh.
And you came up with this concept over 10 years ago? Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. I read a book called Paris 1919, which was an account of the 6 months leading up to the signing of the Treaty of Versailles by Margaret Macmillan, who is a relative of Churchill's and is a great historian. And she also gives amazing lectures. There's amazing podcasts and stuff from Margaret Macmillan.
Oh, well, look it up.
She's got an amazing voice. But anyway, I was really haunted by this book, and I think that it was one of the few historical accounts that I'd ever read cover to cover. Because I'd read, I'm somewhat of a history buff, but I think I've read the first 300 pages of Napoleon's biography or something.
Really?
I've never completed it, and there's so fucking many of them. So basically, the book at the time. It seemed particularly relevant because we were still at war in Iraq, and it was sort of about the way American foreign policy was forged during this period of time. It's not the only thing it's about, but it's one of the things it's about. And so I decided that I was going to try and write a screenplay about the peace conference.
You were 16 or something?
Yeah, I was 17.
17?
I was 17.
Jesus.
But I didn't want it to be something that was dry and didactic, and
right.
So I started to try and figure out ways of approaching it in a more poetic fashion, I guess. So then I started writing the script, and I got to probably the beginning of the second act or something, and then immediately realized or felt that it was too ambitious to try and get made anytime soon. At that point,
realistically, yeah.
I thought, okay.
Were you already? I'm sorry to interrupt. I keep interrupting. Were you already acting at that age?
I was.
When did you start acting? Just so
I started acting when I was 7. When I was 7 years old.
Right? And
I didn't. I actually.
I'm just guessing.
I didn't do very much TV.
That's what I said.
But I did. I acted in a film when I was 12 called 13, which was the first movie I ever did.
Catherine Hardwick, who's been on this podcast.
And then we and before that I had done I had a line on a television show.
Oh, right. I didn't mean to, but the answer is 7, right? You said 7.
That's
okay,
right.
so you had already experienced being on the set quite a bit by the time you were in your teens, and so you were like knew what a director did, and you liked that.
Sure.
Or so you were already thinking on a broader than just acting by the time you were hit puberty. It sounds like.
Yeah. I mean, I was always interested in filmmaking. I was always interested in editing as well. And I've been editing since I was about 16 or something. And so and then I was doing. I actually got a job doing ghostwriting jobs for a friend of mine that had a production company that would owe like a second or third draft on like contractually, but of a film that they never intended to produce, essentially. And so
sounds like a pyramid scheme.
Oh, I mean, all of Hollywood's a pyramid scheme.
Oh, okay. Do tell.
And so he basically knew that he could pay me a lot less money than they would pay someone else to write these scripts. So I started writing a lot of I started doing a lot of these ghost jobs basically, and I guess because I'd read so many screenplays since I was 10 or 11 or something like that, I really I knew how to do it, and I understood the formula essentially. So anyway, yeah. So it's funny because I was writing all these bad scripts for other people just to make some money because I was acting, but I was usually acting in like art house movies and not making a lot of money. I mean, if you go and work for Michael Haneke or Lars von Trier or any of these guys, it's amazing to work with them, but you're not getting paid a lot.
Well, say since we're also getting a beverage that Brady acted in both the second version of Funny Games, which is with Naomi Watts, I think, right?
That's right.
And Michael
Pitt and Tim Roth.
What a cast.
Yeah. And
the four of you, it's just remarkable. And then also of course, Melancholia, which was your performance, by the way. I'm not trying to, I don't have to impress you, but that just blew me away. You were so great in that film.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a small role in that film, but that's very nice.
Well, it's small, but it's really shocking. It's a great role. And you do a lot with it. That's really
thanks.
Yeah, and same with Simon Killer, which is so I'm a fan. So you knew what to do, but this was an incredibly ambitious, and it turns out it's remarkably ambitious for a first feature regardless. The results of The Childhood of a Leader, it's just really...
So basically what happened, I mean, like the point when I actually finished it, or actually, first I should talk about when I put it down. I put it down not only because I was... that age and thought it was too ambitious, but I also put it down because I had applied to the Cannes residence with the project, and I didn't even make it to the finalists or whatever. So I thought after that initial rejection that I was sort of disheartened and whatever. So then when I was 23, I was writing a film with my now wife, Mona Fastvold. It was her first film that she was directing, and she'd asked me to write this script for her and with her, based on an idea she had and a place that she wanted to shoot in, which was this like old Mies van der Rohe copy up in upstate New York. And when we were finished writing her film, she convinced me that I should pick this back up, and she said, "And we're going to finish it together," because she said you're always talking about it and referencing it, and I think now it's time that you do something about it.
When was that?
That was probably I'm 27 now. I'm going to be 28 in August, so this was 5 years ago.
Wow.
So we finished it together. At this point, we were not a couple. We were just writing together. And over the course of the next 5 years, our lives would change a lot because we finished the script. I immediately left for Paris to try to find a French producer for the project. which proved to be quite difficult. Basically, my background as an actor, it was enough to get me in the room. Like, it was enough for me to someone be like, "Hey, this guy acts for
you
like
got their attention.
Olivier Assayas or Michael Haneke or whatever," and they'd be like, "Will you at least have sit down with him?" So everyone would sit down with me, but no one took it seriously, and I felt it, I was really frustrated. I think I met 60 different producers. And then I met a guy named Antoine de Clermont-Tonnerre, who at that point was the president of Unifrance. And I had met him just to get some advice. But he finally said, well, actually, I'd like to produce the film. So, and he had background producing films like Cinema Paradiso and films for Sakharov. And he had a lot of... had really pedigreed producer.
Yeah.
So then, Mona and I decided to relocate to France to try and get the film off the ground because she was one of the producers of the film. So we relocated to France. At this point, we had become a couple, and a few months later, she was pregnant. And at that point, I had Tim Roth attached to the film, who I obviously knew from Michael Haneke's film. Mm-hmm. But he and I had stayed close, and so I had one cast member, and then I had a producer.
So you're saying is you can help get Tim Roth on my podcast?
Yes, I can. That I can do. I'll make arrangements.
I'm joking, but not really joking, because I would, again,
he's great.
He's such an icon.
And he was, and Tim was really. It's it's a long story because we ended up pushing right into the Hateful Eight's dates, and I was not able to move my shoot any more than I already had. He basically ended up not being able to do the movie, and it was my fault because I just couldn't. For a variety of reasons, I couldn't wait to do it for another 5 months.
And he was going to play
the father. He's an advisor to Woodrow Wilson.
Okay.
And so basically, but the one thing is that he was actually a really integral part of the process, because a lot of things changed, but Tim never did. He was like always there. And same with Robert Pattinson, but Robert Pattinson ended up staying. The dates worked, and he's actually in the movie.
He's it comes in the epilogue.
Yeah, he comes in the epilogue, and he also is, and he plays two roles in the film, but he's also in the beginning of the movie as another character. So if we jump back to Paris, though, like several years ago, when my co-writer and producer Mona was pregnant, and my wife,
very crowded,
and she and we were trying to cast the film. Juliette Binoche ended up signing on to the movie, and then she was attached to the movie for over a year. But the problem was she had very, very specific dates that we needed to adhere to.
Otherwise, no go.
And we couldn't get the money together. I mean, the thing that was really frustrating for me, I remember going out to dinner with Juliette and telling her, like, I'm really sorry, but like, not only have we not raised enough money, we haven't raised any money. Like, I have not. So with Juliette Binoche,
those are fun conversations.
Juliette Binoche, Tim Roth, Robert Pattinson, Scott Walker doing the score.
Oh, right.
All of these things, right?
It's an incredible score.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's
really amazing.
It's just so intense, the whole thing.
But it was. I thought that with this package of amazing people involved, that it was going to be a cinch to raise the money for, because we were only looking for $4 million, and $4 million for a film that has a lot of scope and ambition. So I really thought it was a lot of bang for someone's buck, basically. But nobody wanted to invest in it. They didn't want to invest in it because I was so young. They didn't want to invest in it because the subject matter was not that relevant to them
At the time.
Now it couldn't be more relevant.
Exactly.
And so it was really frustrating because people were also confused about the fact that it's sort of like a virtual history. So it starts off in a very realistic place and it ends up in a very evocative, but not it's not a literal retelling or literal historical account.
Well, let's just say, this is right after World War I, and right, and as you mentioned, the Versailles Treaty takes place during the course of the story, and so this is in the early days before, just right before World War II. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, basically, in 1919, for anyone who is not immediately familiar when they hear the Versailles Treaty, but the Versailles Treaty, and by the way, it's completely there's gaps in my education about all sorts of things, I think it's just fair to fill people in that basically the Treaty of Versailles, or actually it was a series of treaties that closed World War I and left Germany with a debt that they would not have been able to repay until 1988.
Really?
And yes,
it was 88.
So the thing is that on the one hand, it was easy to understand why Clemenceau and David Lloyd George were so bloodthirsty, because they'd lost a lot of citizens. 18 million people died, and they needed someone to blame. And even though it was enormously complex, and Germany was not only to blame, of course, but it basically left the nation impoverished and ripe for nationalism to sort of take over 14 years later. This document but the treaty also, like, it was the redrawing of Europe. So basically, it was the Ottoman Empire fell. Hungary lost their coastline. Suddenly, there were new borders, and so it created for a very tumultuous and violent era. And the effects of the Versailles Treaty are still being felt to this day in Syria and all over the world. So basically, what the film is it's about a young boy who's sort of metaphysically linked to this document. So the closer that the adults around him get to completing and signing this document, the more violent his behavior becomes. So the idea was that we would use this home as a sort of microcosm like an Ibsen play or something, to sort of like use these archetypes and look at hierarchies, how they're formed, and various shifts in the power dynamic within a household, and talk about that and talk about that power, the shifting of the power dynamics in relation to what was happening, then, and is still happening in the socio-political sphere.
Did anybody has remarked how with this boy, what's the young actor, the child actor?
Oh yeah, Tom Sweet.
Tom Sweet.
Yeah.
He just bears such, in my mind anyway, he bears such a remarkable likeness to the kid who played Danny in The Shining.
Oh, that's interesting.
Did you ever see that?
Yeah.
Do you see it when I say that? It reminds me.
He really, he really reminds me of like a Visconti kid. So but I think it's just like,
that's true.
It's just like his hair, I guess.
It's like the Garden of the Fitzy Contini type of
exactly.
Era
yeah. This kind of
which
this
was
kind
also
of
about
this,
fascism and it's a good comparison.
Yeah, I love that De Sica movie. It's really great. And so basically, there's when I was looking for this boy, he walked in and he actually looked like that. Like he walked in the room and that was his real haircut. And I was
dramatic.
I was just like amazed. I was like looking for a child of another era.
Yeah.
And then there he was in a soccer jersey, but there he was,
But you could see it. It's really
he's amazing, and he had no interest in acting. I mean, he was not like pursuing. He's not a child actor. I mean, we just found him on a soccer field.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Shocking, amazing.
But now he's acting in movies, and it's really interesting because I don't know if he's going to act his whole life, but he's so smart that I can tell that this has set him off on a path.
Yeah, he has options now.
Well, yeah, like he's a really creative and smart guy, and I just feel like it's going to like open up a lot of amazing things for him, which I'm excited about, because it's always weird when you go in and you disrupt a family's life because you're like, hey, your kid is really special. We want him to star in a $5 million movie.
He's like in every scene.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, and they, I mean, his parents were like, they were like flabbergasted, excited, but they were like, but they were like shocked, but they were really creative people. So like his dad's his mom's a photographer and works in fashion, and his dad is a graphic designer, and they really were super supportive, and they really understood the film, where I was like so terrified I'd find this amazing kid that had like terrible parents, but it was the opposite. They were not only totally normal, but they were also exceptionally special, brilliant, and warm. So basically, there were so many things that would have been an awkward conversation with another kind of family. I mean, obviously there's the sequence in the film where this kid sort of rebels by refusing to get dressed for a period of time, and I remember like talking to the casting director, and I was like, people are so fucking weird nowadays about anything to do with kids. And I mean, I have a 2-year-old daughter, but I was like, I would never ask a kid to do something I wouldn't be comfortable with my own kid doing, or that I would have felt uncomfortable doing as a kid, But because there was nudity, and it wasn't at all a sexual context, but because there was nudity, and 9 years old is a strange. Yeah. It's an age where it's kind of like some kids at 9 years old already have a sexuality, and some kids don't. And so one of the things that I had a conversation with him about, I remember asking him, like, do you have crushes on girls? Do you like girls or whatever? Yeah. And I realized that I was like, thank God he's still a little boy, because he was like, oh, girls, gross.
Yeah. And my kid is 12 and he's still, I don't believe him anymore, but
yeah, well, at 12 he's probably lying to you, right?
the puberty stuff is coming fast and furious, so I don't know.
But this is all just to say that because his parents were photographers and they had this, they really understood why it was a part of this story and what it was about. And there was we both had we all had a conversation with Tom together to see if that was going to be okay, and it was no problem. He was like, oh yeah, whatever. It's like changed in the locker room or whatever. Right. And so everything about. Also, there's some violence in the story and stuff, and definitely. And I always wanted them to, know that their kid was really in good hands. So they were at the monitor with me for the duration of production. I mean, not because they asked to be, but because I asked them to be. I said, I just want you to always know what's going on. because there's also I remember one day we shut down production because I was like, he's really tired, and they were like, yeah, he's super tired, he needs to go to bed. Like, and even though our days were only 8 or 9 hours, I mean, they were pretty short days.
Legal, like that's a regulation thing too.
Yeah, well, I mean the child labor laws on movie sets are a little bit more relaxed in Hungary than they are in like France, for example. Where
you shot in Hungary.
Yeah, we shot in Hungary.
Some remarkable locations.
In France, you can only actually shoot with a kid for 3 hours a day, which is kind of absurd. I mean, having grown up on sets, when I was a kid, I didn't want to leave. I really was happy to be on set. I was excited to be there. And so, it's all the 3 hours is impossible to get any work done, especially if the kid is like the star of the movie. But yeah, it was the whole thing could have been so much more challenging, but because Tom was so brilliant and in tune as well, like him, he, for a 9-year-old boy, he really understood the material. I mean, like, when I sat down with him and I said, this is what this is about, and this is what this scene is about, and I wanted to make sure that he understood everything.
The context.
The context of like why he was behaving as he was behaving. And
it's such an interesting thing because having grown up like I grew up, in the 80s where child actors were all based on their looks and they were cast, so they would just be memorizing or reading the lines, not really understanding, and it was so obnoxious. And this is such the antithesis of that. So
yeah, I mean, he's I mean, one thing I would actually say that one of the best things about my experience of being a young actor that I brought with me was that I knew that I wanted to be treated like an equal. Right. When I was a kid, I was there doing the same job that everyone else was, and I didn't need to be treated like an adult, but I wanted to be treated with respect and fairness, and like I understood what was going on.
Not talked down to.
Yeah, right. I think it's a huge mistake to try to trick a performance out of a kid. Which you see a lot. Like a lot of directors have this method where if the
your dog died.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
School. Not necessarily that cliche anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, no. You're totally exactly. Like they're like they don't know how to relate. It's like they don't know how to relate to kids, so they kind of do this weird thing where they they can really patronize them.
But if you go back to the days of like Mickey Rooney
and Dorothy.
What's her face? Come on.
I know, it's terrible. I know. Hold on.
Judy Garland.
Judy
Sorry, I should have let you have that.
I said Greta. Yeah, Judy Garland. There we go.
And Greta Gerwig.
And Greta Gerwig.
Totally. I mean, they were smart. They understood, but they were also lied to. I mean, and they didn't need to be because you could tell they were smart. He's got a career if he wants it, like you say. I think you got a great performance. I mean, it's a terrific film. It's really intense, and it needs to be seen in a movie theater. I want to add that too.
Yeah,
it's really, a large.
It really does. I mean, it's like it's 35 millimeter. It's a 100-piece orchestra.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I
mean, it really like
it has scale.
And the other thing is that the first, it's really funny because we can always tell like everyone that worked on the film. Whenever anyone references looks at a review, like we can always tell if somebody watched it on a link or if they saw it in a theater, because the first 30 minutes are really in the dark.
Yeah. That's right. And there's an overture, and then there's like a.
We shot in very low lighting conditions. It's very underexposed, but it's properly exposed. So it's like in a movie theater in the dark. It looks perfect, but it's definitely not a movie that like works really well if you've got a lot of glare on your screen or something, because it's just like the image.
I
just
saw it
disappears.
in the worst possible way imaginable. I'll just tell you right up front.
Don't worry, but you can see it again in the theater.
I want to. I actually would love to. I was going to ask them for a screener, which I still might, but if they have a physical one, because. Like I said, I saw it in the worst possible way imaginable.
Yeah, the links they have have crazy watermarks on them and stuff. Like it's totally wild. Like,
Yeah, it's just right.
It's a
If there's
nightmare.
every possible thing, the only it's not, except for those little things that that you were like on TV now, where something pops in the center of the screen and it's like says the next show is
Yeah, exactly.
hey, here I am. Oh God, The Childhood of a Leader is the name of the film. It's Brady Corbet's debut as director, and it's magnificent debut. I mean, honestly, I think you're going to have a wonderful career too as a filmmaker. I mean, this is just a really strongly,
Thanks a lot.
I want to say produced film, but directed. It's wild and intense. So lighten up a little. I'm going to tell you. That's my advice for you. Otherwise, you're going to go nuts.
The next, my next film is a little lighter.
Okay. So you've got something already.
Not a lot. It's not a lot lighter, but it's a little lighter.
Okay. That's all right. It's okay. I just had this actor David Call on the show again, and
Of course,
David?
I love David.
David's
I worked with David many years ago.
Okay, David's he's been on now twice. He came into the studio the other day, and he talks about. I'm like, you're the heavy a lot because he's got those very leading man looks, and he's tall and thin, and he goes, he goes, every time my mom, are you going to die again in this or kill somebody,
Yeah.
So he's so dark the things he gets.
I mean, it's funny because David is like it's so funny when somebody is that good looking and yet their taste is just like so. I mean, he couldn't be more art house and obscure.
Right.
Like everything everything he pursues, which is
can
just
get
great.
a TV show where you're the cop
combination.
and just be done with it. But okay. Well, so you have another thing. So hopefully you come back on again, right?
Absolutely.
And
yeah, I'm
keep doing it?
I'm excited. The next one seems like it's coming together a lot faster.
Yeah, that's good.
Which
I'm glad
is
to hear
really
that.
good.
Well, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Of
again.
course.
It's great to have you back.
Yeah,
on.
thank you so much.